Alrighty, rocking and rolling. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on the Infinity Sports Network. The big story of the day, Bill Belichick is going to coach college. That's right. The six-time Super Bowl winning head coach is now off to UNC with Chapel Hill. I guess they're calling it Chapel Bill, and someone that knows Bill Belichick very well is the Football Night in America analyst. You can see him each and every Sunday on Sunday Night Football on NBC. He's got the Lombardi trophies behind him because he played a big role in three of those six championships that Bill Belichick won in New England. And that, of course, is Devin McCourty. D-Mac, appreciate the time. Always great to have you on. How you been?
No problem, man. It's funny seeing you not at the Super Bowl. We always see each other in the Super Bowl city, so good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. So how do you react to this? Just wondering. It was speculated for a week. Now we know it's official. Bill Belichick going to UNC.
I think I was like most of the guys that, used to play for him. You were kind of surprised. You've always seen him as, this NFL coach, this coach that coaches grown men, and he coaches grown men a certain way that I think requires you to either get to his standard or, as a lot of people know, the Patriot way of, hey, you either go and you do it this way or we get rid of you. We move on and we get the next guy. But I think ultimately, what this shows is that he's a football guy. He's a football coach, not just being around the game and talking about it, what he could do on TV. And he's done this past year. He wants to be a part of a program, an organization, whatever you want to call it, where each week he sees an opponent. He's thinking of ways to win. He can strategize. Like, that's what he loves the most. And I remember seeing him in September. He was at the Washington versus Rutgers game, and Steve Belichick is defensive coordinator at Washington, and he spent a ton of time in Washington, and we were kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, rooting for Rutgers and him rooting for Washington. But he was dissecting and giving us what the guy should be doing in the game, how he's watched those guys and how they should be playing. You were talking to a football coach that missed coaching football. So surprised at his college, but ultimately I think he wanted to get back to coaching football, and not surprised that he's going back and doing that this year.
Now, I know the college game is now similar to the NFL game with NIL, but there still are differences. And right, we've seen a lot of guys go from college to the NFL or vice versa. Some succeed, most do not. I know it's Bill. I know he's a six-time Super Bowl champion. And like you said, he just wants to get back to coaching ball. But how do you think that transition will be going from being a lifer in the pros to now having to be a college guy in your 70s?
It'll be different, but I think the thing that sticks out is I think people should be aware that this past year, like, he's been traveling around a lot, right? When you think about being in different media appearances, then flying to Washington to be a part of that program. So you have one end where he's been very much a part of a college program, helping out coaching staff, his son, around the players. And then when we talk about recruiting and bringing guys in, he's also been traveling and doing those things. So that won't be new to him. The adjustment will be the day in and day out of, hey, coach, sorry, class ran late. Hey, coach, I got this test coming up. But like, the part of the school part is what he's not used to. I think that will be somewhat of an adjustment. You're used to when you get those guys in your organization in the NFL, it's football is your life. He used to tell us, whatever you got left, open a draw, put it in there and pull it out after the season, and then work on it or fix or whatever you need to do it after the season. We have 4 or 5 weeks left, and that's what he would tell us. But college, you can't do that. These kids have to be eligible. They have to do different things. You can't just say it's only football. And I think that will be one of his biggest adjustments.
What do you think Devin McCourty Bill will be like when he has to recruit and someone walks into his office, a high school kid, and he's trying to sell him on why he should elect to come to Chapel Hill?
I think that's going to be one of the easier things. I think when you think about free agency and all of those things, you have a salary cap and you're trying to maneuver and do different things. I think he's going to get more NIL money than people imagine. I think people are going to want to be in his orbit. I think he's going to be able to raise money by going to talk at corporations. Like, there's going to be so many different ways that he's not going to have to look at, well, if this guy's making this for this position, he's going to be like, okay, I got these group of guys with this slot or slush of NIL money that I have. So I think he's going to be able to maneuver that. And then he's going to walk in, your living room, whether you're a guy in the portal, whether you're a guy coming out of high school, and he's going to tell you, hey, what position you play? All right, I've been around Tom Brady for 20 years. Oh, you play safety? Oh, I was around Rodney Harrison for X amount of years. Hey, I was around this guy for them. Like, oh, you play offensive line? Oh, let me tell you about Logan Mankins. Oh, you're a defensive tackle? Let me tell you about Richard Seymour and Vince Wilfork. Like, he's gonna have
You
so
know he's
many
bringing
lists
up
of
Lawrence
names.
Taylor too. Come on,
LT will
D-Mac.
probably be back. Like if you've ever heard
Yeah.
LT talk about Coach Belichick, how much love he has for him, how much he's learned from him, those guys, like, just imagine what spring ball is going to be like in North Carolina. The amount of guys that are going to be trickulating through there, coming through, saying hi to coach, checking them out. I already texting guys like, hey, make sure you save me a spot. I want to come down, check out spring ball and get some free North Carolina Jordan gear. So I think that part of it, I think he'll be able to do. And I think the biggest thing in all of this, he has a plan. He hasn't just been sitting there this year not thinking about what he wants to do. He has a plan going forward. It's not a guarantee it's going to work, but if you're going to pick a guy with a plan and his success and his history, I would bet my money on Bill Belichick and him being able to go out there and be successful.
I still think we're all trying to figure out what the recruiting part is going to look like. And I do feel like it's been a gross overreaction for many people because Bill will do whatever it takes to win. So I'm not saying Bill is going to be on a plane every day and going into everyone's living room, but we all love what Coach Prime has done. Deion Sanders, he's never taken an in-home visit. He makes people come to him. So I think the idea that the recruiting is going to be impossible for Bill Belichick, I kind of laugh at the overreaction in the last 24 to 48 hours with it.
I agree with you. And I look at Coach Prime, like Coach Prime's made a living in the portal because the portal is full of guys who they were somewhere and it didn't work out. And usually their ultimate goal is to get a shot at the pros. When you go down to Colorado, it's Warren Sapp, it's all former coaches in the NFL teaching you. That's what North Carolina is going to be like. It's going to be all former coaches, former NFL scouts, GMs. Like it's going to be all of those guys. And then who's going to be coming to their practices to watch? Their friends, head coaches of NFL teams. They love being around Coach Belichick. You don't think they're going to love to go there in the spring or love to go there for pro day? It's going to be the most NFL attention that the University of North Carolina has ever gotten in the history of North Carolina, probably. And I think that's going to be attractive. I saw there was a kid on the offensive line for North Carolina entered the portal on Monday. Yesterday, he was like, hey, I changed my mind. I think I'm going to come back and play for Coach Belichick. And I think that there's going to be some of that again, but it doesn't guarantee success. And I
Sure.
think that's what they're going to have to learn. They're going to have to be patient. It's going to be new for so many different people. If you've held some type of position at North Carolina that has a position of power, it might change a little bit with Coach
You
Belichick coming
think?
in there and the way he wants to do things. I think people are going to have to accept that and be ready for change.
So here's what I'm wondering. How much success could he have? Like, I'm not expecting North Carolina to win a national championship with Bill Belichick. I think they'll consistently be bowl eligible. They've been that the last few years. I'm looking at like 7 or 8 wins a season, and maybe there is a year where he could be going to an ACC championship game.
And that's what I look at it. I look at it now in the ACC. You've looked at Florida State had its year. You look at Clemson being kind of that team year in and year out that is usually the top dog. I think he zeroed in on how do I beat Dabo Swinney and Clemson? That will be the thing he preaches every single year. That's the standard. How do we get to that standard? And I think ultimately that's what I would imagine them competing for, a chance to be ACC champs, because then that gives you a chance to be what? It gives you a chance to be in the college playoffs, which I think for him, he's sitting there like, if you keep giving me a one game chance to game plan and scheme, I like my chances. And then I think even more for him, when I have that chance to game plan and scheme in these college playoffs, my kids will be on winter break. So now the most complex scheme I can put in will be this time because they're going to be having a break. We will be able to just do all football. We will be able to have NFL style days where we're in and we're all football. And my guys will buy into doing that. Why? Because I'm going to tell them we're going to compete for a national championship. And I think those are the messages he's going to try to put out there. And I think that's going to be the ultimate goal. And I think the next part of that is going to be the draft picks. How many guys do they get that end up being drafted, high draft picks? Because that's going to bring even better kids into the school.
Now, you know it and I know it, right? We both love Bill Belichick. And we're all going to talk ourselves into this being a really cool thing that could happen at UNC. I'm going to be honest with you, Devin. I'm still annoyed. I'm annoyed that last year the Atlanta Falcons didn't hire him. I'm annoyed that no team told him the last few weeks, hey, Bill, we heard about UNC. Wait,
Hold
we'll
on.
come get you. I think it's a massive mistake by some of these NFL teams, and that's why there's a lot of incompetent organizations around the league.
And look, I get it. Like I look at a guy like Ben Johnson, you look at Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel's going to be out there again this year. There's some coaches out there that you look and you're like, they're probably going to get jobs this year. But there's not that many coaches out there that would knock Bill Belichick out. I mean, we talk on our show and talking to Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk about like the Chicago Bears. You have this young quarterback, Caleb Williams. You've continued to fail quarterbacks with different people you bring in. And he was like, they shouldn't get a new coach. They should go try to get a coach from another team. Call up San Francisco. Hey, do you want to part ways with Kyle Shannon? Because that's the realization in the NFL. These new coaches get hired. It takes time to figure out how to be a good NFL head coach. But these teams don't give them time. Look at Gerard Mayo in New England. He's been there for not even a full season, and people are already like, this isn't working. What do you mean? Like, this team was bad the last few years. He got in, and already Antonio Pierce in Vegas, people are like, hey, they're probably moving on from him already. So to me, then you look and you're like, well, why would you not want to go after a guy who's been a head coach, who studied your team and already is going to have a plan at how you make that team better? Oh, yeah. And that's coming from 20 or 40 something years of coaching experience. So that to me is the weird thing. But you said it. There's a reason why a lot of teams continue to be bad year in, year out, because the people making the ultimate decision, they're worried about what they want to do selfishly, what makes them happy, not necessarily what might be best for the organization and those guys on the football field. And that's why we continue to see this cycle. But I think everyone around football thought that there was no doubt in 2025, Bill Belichick would be coaching in the NFL. It was just a matter of where.
Yeah, and it's crazy that it didn't end up happening, and now we know that he's going back to UNC, unless if in a few weeks from now he scribbles something down on a napkin, I resign as the HC of UNC, and then who knows, maybe he's going back to the Jaguars in a few weeks.
You know, and you never know. Is this a 5-year thing, a 2-year thing, a 1 year? Like, we don't know. Like, and I think he probably doesn't know. I think he has a plan. He wants to go coach, and I don't think he's going to make anything a final decision of where he's going to be. He's going to see how it goes.
So this is a 5-year contract. Now, just because a coach signs a 5-year contract doesn't mean he has to stay there for 5 years. We also got to see what the Steve Belichick dynamic is. There's a lot of speculation right now. So you're not going to rule this out, that this is the last that we've ever seen of Bill coaching in the NFL.
I wouldn't. I think this is going to be, listen, no matter how great his track record is in the NFL and really in life, people remember you for what you did last. And that's the thing. And his most recent time in New England hasn't been good. He goes to North Carolina and he starts killing it at North Carolina. There's going to be some owner that says, we missed it. Go get him now. We have a chance to be a Super Bowl champion now. Let's go get him. Whether that's a team coming off a bad record, or a team just feels like, hey, we've underachieved. Let's go get Bill Belichick. I think that could still happen in the future.
Let me ask you this, going around the league just real quickly. Devin McCourty does a great job now, Football Night in America. You'd also catch him on some Westwood One games throughout the season as well. The Eagles locker room. Last year, we know they had the talent, they had the record, they were 10-1, and it was a bad locker room, and that hurt them down the stretch. Now, even on a 9-game win streak, Brandon Graham, who's hurt, is talking about a relationship with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, how it's not there. And now A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts have had to respond to it all week. We heard how A.J. Brown handled it after the game with the short answers. Is that locker room still concerning to you, or do you think Nick Sirianni, who couldn't do it last year, could rally the troops together and not have history repeat itself?
It's hard, but I think the last part of what you said, it falls on Nick Sirianni. He has to make sure, and I think what they've done a good job this week is, we're good. We talked. We're good. Nothing's not. Handle it in-house. Whatever they need to do, that needs to be the message. And I think Sirianni needs to have a strong message when he comes in there and he starts talking to everybody of, I wouldn't be mad if he came in and said, hey, everybody, Shut the hell up. We don't need to talk about this stuff. Let's talk about how we go and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to play one of the best teams in the NFL right now, and we're talking about everything else that has nothing to do with winning. You don't think Mike Tomlin's going to be using this to fire up his team to get ready to go? And I think that's the strong message that needs to come from the top. So each time somebody else speaks about it, they feel like, damn, I'm going outside of what coach said. I'm being an outlier in this group. I think that's the message that needs to be sent. I don't know if that was sent last year. I don't know what ended up being the fallout of last year, but I think the stressful thing for the Eagles right now is you've already experienced last year. Why bring this on to yourselves this year? It doesn't mean their season's over, but I think as a player, I remember being in the locker room. It was annoying knowing you had to answer questions that you didn't care to talk about when you did want to talk about the game. You wanted to talk about Joey Porter Jr. in the matchup, and you want to talk about TJ Watt and Herbig and Highsmith and blocking and like you want to talk about those things, but every other question's about that, and you understand it. So like that's the frustrating thing for them, but they could get past it. It's not something that I think is going to automatically derail them.
I also think an interesting thing, and right, you've been in a locker room before where you have a young draft pick, but then a veteran's really playing well or he's redeemed himself. You look at Sam Darnold, like in Minnesota, his contract's up at the end of the year. He's going to get a lot of money, whether it's from them or someone else. We'll have to wait and see. But they just took a top 10 pick on JJ McCarthy. If you were in that locker room, and I know when Devin McCourty was playing, you don't talk about another grown man's money. I get it. But now you're in the media, like, what would you kind of be feeling truthfully as a player? Would it be, hey, bring back Sam next year or go to the youngster?
It's hard, but those guys know what JJ McCarthy looked like. So sometimes you need to remind yourself of, hey, JJ was going to be our guy. Like, we're good. Like, if we got to come back. Now, I think the hard thing is how far this season goes, right? If you end up in the NFC Championship, you end up somewhere like that. As a player, you kind of feel like, hey, run this
We're right
thing
there.
back.
Yeah.
Like, we've gotten this far. Now, if you go and you lose in the wild card or divisional round, then I don't think it's as big of a deal. But again, I worry about the Vikings right now because it's a tough situation to be in. You got Sam Darnold, who's played his butt off, but you also remember that you were going to start JJ McCarthy when the season started. Like that, he was going to be your guy, it seemed like. So you don't want to just forget about that and create a situation where you pay this guy all this money and you're going to have to pay him because there's going to be a market for Sam Darnold where other teams are going to want to pay him because he showed that he can be productive and help a team out. So I think if there's a chance to bring him back at a number you feel good about, yeah, you might want to see how that goes because especially you have an unproven guy who got hurt last year. Like you don't know exactly how it's going to work out and your team is good enough to win. So, but I think ultimately if it gets too high, then you try to draft maybe or get another free agent quarterback to be a backup, and you ride out with JJ McCarthy because that's why you drafted him. And we look at Bo Nix, we look at Jaden Daniels. Those teams made those decisions. You look at our guy in New England, Drake made those decisions. They're confident in those guys, and I think you have to do that.
Last thing I'll ask you, just getting back to Bill, because I know when Bill would undress you guys on film reviews, he would be like, oh, I could go get someone at Foxborough High to go, make these plays, McCourty. Now he actually gets to go to Foxborough High to get the talent. That's the best part.
He might want to cut that line out now.
Devin McCourty, Football Night in America, Westwood 1. We appreciate the time as always.
No problem, man. Good seeing you.